Within Our Power, a paper written by Most Worshipful Dwight L. Smith, past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Indiana, delivered in Virginia Research Lodge number 1777 on December 13th, 1980. I have edited this paper slightly to make it under 20 minutes. Once upon a time, the labors of the craft came to a standstill. There was confusion in the temple. A trestle board, which had long displayed the designs of a master workman, was blank. Like sheep without a shepherd, the workmen wandered about idly. No longer was there a sense of direction. Order had given way to chaos. A noble Tyrian, in whose mind the designs had been conceived, had been stricken down in the performance of duty, not by enemies from without the temple, but by foes from within. The extent to which a legend may be repeating itself in North American Freemasonry today may be open to dispute, but certainly no man can challenge the premise that the craftsmen are not at their labors to the extent that they should be. And few, I dare say, will take issue when I suggest that there is indeed confusion in the temple. Suppose I should begin by saying, brethren, let us address ourselves to ways whereby we, as Freemasons, can help to bring about the dawn of a better day for ourselves, in so doing, a better day for all mankind. You would respond with the most natural of all reactions to a great challenge. That's all very good, but how? Before we consider how lodges can help to advance the dawn of a better day, let us return to the legend of Hiram. You will recall King Solomon divided the workmen with orders to travel east, west, north, and south in search of the missing master builder. One of the parties returned with a report from a seafaring man, where 3 men, who appeared to be workmen from the temple, attempted to gain passage on a ship about to leave for a far distant country. Thwarted in their effort, they had returned into the mountainous region. And what was King Solomon's reply? The Indiana ritual has the words, "Your intelligence proves but one thing to me, that the ruffians are still in the country and within our power." Let's keep those words uppermost in our minds for the rest of this evening. Here is what Solomon is telling us. If Freemasonry has a stake in building a better tomorrow, and if we are to do our part, we must face the fact that the forces against which we must contend are right here at home, in our own districts, our own lodges, right here within ourselves, and they are within our power. Both the problem and the solution lay in our own backyard. If we have the will, we can do something about it. Before I explain how, allow me to say that I am imposing a moratorium on myself, a moratorium on any mention of our old familiar excuses, the scapegoats to cover up the fact that our lodges, by and large, simply aren't doing the job they should be doing. There will be no wringing of hands on our declining membership, or poor attendance at lodge meetings, or master masons who failed to memorize the last catechism, or that Freemasonry is not attracting young men or professional men to the extent it should, or the common complaint that men petition our lodges for the degrees, receive those degrees, and we see them no more. There will be no talk from me on how television, bowling, fishing, or the host of other organizations and activities compete with Freemasonry for our time, interest, and loyalty. Best of all, you'll not hear from me that Masonry is hiding its light under a bushel, which is nothing more than a King James Version way of saying that we should seek publicity, going to ridiculous extremes to be in the public eye. Instead of all these, we'll talk about how each lodge, working within its own sphere of influence and within the framework of Masonic tradition, can help Freemasonry do its part in bringing about the dawn of a better day. To avoid offense, here is the approach I shall take. Have you ever heard anyone say, "If I had my druthers"? That's how I shall frame it. If I had my druthers, my choice, Masonic lodges would fix their sights on some fundamental things and strive mightily to operate in accordance with those things. First, if I had my druthers, the leadership in Virginia and all across the land would ask themselves some pointed questions, some embarrassing questions, such as this one. Brethren, do we have our priorities in the proper order? And if we do not, then what can we do to get them back into the proper order so that first things will be first? Ralph Waldo Emerson lamented the fact that things are in the saddle and ride mankind. Hence, when we speak of those forces still in the country and within our power, we must not overlook things. We must observe how, to a very real extent, things have ceased to be our servants and have become our masters. We are the servants of our temples, of the dollars required to maintain them, the insurance premiums, servants of the new heating plant, the repairs to the roof, the carpet that is wearing out, the taxes. And so what happens? All too often, our priorities get out of order and we become more attentive to ways in which we can stay alive than following our avowed purpose of creating and maintaining an atmosphere in which men can experience brotherhood as they never experienced it before, in an manner not to be found in any other place. We forget that we are here to help men improve themselves, to teach rough ashlers how to become perfect ashlers. The inevitable result is that we become preoccupied with numbers and with dollars. We need the dollars to stay alive, and therefore we need numbers. And we need them enough that we lower the bar, pull down the standards to get more numbers, to get more dollars. And when our standards are lowered ever so little, the entire structure is weakened. Gresham's law of economics states that when worthless money gets in circulation, sound money doesn't drive it out. On the contrary, the worthless drives out that which is sound. Gresham's law applies in Freemasonry also. When we compromise and use inferior human material, we cannot expect that which is sound to eliminate that which is substandard. It can and does work the other way. Frightening thought, isn't it? Our future then depends on our ability to look beyond numbers and dollars to the quality of our membership and the quality of our leadership and to the basic purpose for which we are here. A distinguished Masonic leader, Most Worshipful L. Douglas Delano, admonishes us never to lose sight of the fact that all institutions that are devoted to the cultivation of the best that is in man are having troubled times in this period of our civilization. It was true in 1977, and it is true today. Freemasonry does not stand alone. But Freemasonry does have its own peculiar gift, its unique appeal, that will work to our distinct advantage if only we have the eyes to see it and the will to use it. If I had my druthers, our lodges would at last accept the fact that it takes time to make a Mason. A perfect ashlar cannot be made from a rough ashlar in 3 easy steps. Becoming a Mason, a real for sure Mason, is a lifetime job if we really work at it. One of the weakest links in our Masonic chain is the reluctance or downright refusal of our lodges to spend the time necessary to give the new Mason good and wholesome instruction for as long as he displays any interest. The strongest indictment I could level against the Masonic fraternity in the United States of America is that we are in too great a hurry to confer the degrees and get it over with. There is a lack of understanding as to what constitutes light, further light, and more light. Too many think that memorizing answers is all that is needed to be a Freemason. That peculiar idea springs from the fact that we require and make a great deal over the memorization of catechisms for advancement. But what do we do when our eager young Mason, thrilled behind description as experience, wants to know more? The reason for this and for that. How did it all come about? What does this symbol mean and that symbol? And how can this all be applied in the everyday life of a Mason? What do we do with him? The answer is nothing short of a tragedy. We do nothing. We give him the brush off, letting him know, in effect, that we haven't time for him. Hence, another disillusioned Mason looks elsewhere, joins other bodies in the hope of finding answers there, or worse yet, loses all interest in the craft. He asks for bread, we give him a stone. We might keep this in mind the next time we are disposed to be critical of a new member who ceases coming to lodge and develop interests elsewhere. He could simply be searching for that which his lodge should have given him but didn't. Of course, I can appreciate the fact that lodge officers may be devoting all the time they can spare. But why not enlist the services of brethren who are not officers? We might be amazed at the contribution they can make. The greatest service our lodges could render to Freemasonry today would be to make available facilities and occasions whereby interested Masons, young and old, can meet informally for food and drink and conversation, an exchange of ideas, and more light in Masonry. Away with the endless memorizing. Away with the idea that learning the answers to a catechism is the beginning and the end of the search for light. If I had my druthers, our lodges would be small in size, and there would be many more of them, many, many more. American Freemasonry has consistently run counter to the time-tested experience of the fraternity in the British Isles and of the European continent. Some of us insist that it doesn't work to the good of the craft when lodges become large and impersonal, regardless of how many petitions a large lodge may receive or how wealthy it may be. It isn't size that counts, nor is it the number of degrees conferred each year. What counts is brotherhood and camaraderie, the privilege of close fraternal association in a fellowship of kindred spirits, the opportunity for personal growth through involvement in that which is great and challenging and inspiring. Small lodges can meet less frequently, and there would be more diversity in the meetings, more opportunity for gatherings of a social nature, more discussions of what Freemasonry is all about. There is resistance here in America to the idea of class lodges. I suppose the term class may be somewhat of a dirty word, so common interest might fit better. In any event, why the resistance to class lodges when we have scores of them already? What is so undemocratic about brethren of the same profession or business and those of common backgrounds and interests who meet in their own lodge? On this subject, many will agree in principle, but few will be prepared to offer a workable plan as to how it can be done. Limitation by way of Grand Lodge legislation would be, in my opinion, a serious mistake. The benefits to be derived from smaller lodges can be realized only over a long period of years and with leadership that is patient and tireless and unshakable in its devotion to an ideal. With Grand Lodge encouragement, I believe the seeds could be sown within the lodges. So when the time for action comes, it will spring from the brethren themselves. Do Masons today have that kind of patience? I doubt whether they do. The sad reality is that economics may force us to do it anyway. If I had my drudgers, our leadership would take a long and critical look at the Preston lectures used in our lodges, particularly as to their content, the time of delivering them, and the manner of the recitation. I am well aware that to question anything pertaining to the ritual is the equivalent of desecrating the flag or an attack on motherhood. Furthermore, I think it likely that you're about to say to me, you may be right, but what are you going to do about it? And that is indeed a logical question. I do know that by law, the lectures must be recited in full each time a degree is conferred and before the lodge is closed. Every word of the official lecture must be repeated. Nothing is omitted, and even the delivery must be the same. We unload the entire truckload as if we were never expecting to see that exhausted candidate again. And in all too many instances, we don't. That fact shouldn't be surprising, but it is. In expressing these thoughts, I speak as one who has a deep affection for the ceremonial ritual of making a man a Mason. I wouldn't change it in the least. And I speak also as one who has delivered every one of the Preston lectures, not once, but many times. They contain material of which I am exceedingly fond, but not all of it, and certainly not all of it every time a lodge confers a degree. I began to ask, is this a practice that does something for Freemasonry, or is it doing something to Freemasonry? The late Myron K. Lingle, past Grand Master of Masons in Illinois, said it so very well. It is the lecture that is emptying our lodge rooms. I find myself in complete agreement with Brother George S. Draffin of Scotland, who writes, William Preston's lectures, as opposed to a ceremonial ritual, were written for another age. If we are to instruct our candidates in the tenets of our craft, some other Preston must arise and prepare for us a series of short educational talks which can be delivered either in lodge or in a lodge of instruction. Sadly enough, this is not a question that is likely to be viewed objectively and dispassionately, but it could be and should. Certainly, the ancient lectures would not totter and crumble into ruins if some other Preston were to arise with new and better lectures suited to our new and modern audience. If lectures as we know them should be recited at all, they should be brief. In my humble opinion, they should be fodder to stimulate discussion at a time other than when the degree is conferred, not as a mandatory addition to it. Here is a place where lodges with imagination could institute programs featuring brief capsule-type lectures dealing with one subject only, perhaps in a relaxed atmosphere outside the tiled lodge. Lest temperatures and blood pressures rise above normal, let me hasten to add that I'm realistic. There will be little or no change anytime soon. Someday, yes, but not now. In the meantime, we could at least make some needed improvements. We could do something about inaccuracies and inconsistencies. There are too many of them, and the fact that we persist in repeating them does us no good. I also hope for the day when those horrid visual aids can be discarded forever and new ones, dignified and artistic, be used in their place. We deserve something better than the artwork we have. It might be worth the effort. Some other Preston within the membership of your own lodge might amaze you with the presentation you can make, provided such brief talks and discussions were encouraged and regular provision made for them. If I had my druthers, but there are so many that I would not think of discussing all of them, permit me to touch on very briefly a few other, and after that, the concluding druther. I wish all brethren took pride in their appearance when they meet on the level and part on the square. I wish our American lodges would establish qualifications for being worshipful master that are of greater importance than the winning of an endurance contest. In other words, I'm not an advocate of automatic promotion or the long progressive line. I wish our lodges could all create the office of almoner, that the officer thus selected always be one who is not advancing to master, but who works at the job, actively performing the duties of that office week in and week out. The goodwill that could be generated by the right kind of almoner is incalculable. If I had my druthers, lodges would begin to take steps to reestablish the old traditions of Freemasonry, and at least one respect, the festive board. Provide frequent opportunities for men of like interests, kindred spirits, to gather in pleasant, relaxed surroundings, for no other purpose than refreshment and conversation, physical, intellectual, and spiritual refreshment, just talking and enjoying the company of each other. In short, I am pleading for the return of Freemasonry to its original moorings, a voluntary association in which compatible men may find fellowship and experience brotherhood at its best. My brethren, it isn't possible, it isn't necessary, it isn't desirable that all Masons be just like us. I am totally in earnest when I say to you that I believe the resurgence of Freemasonry depends to a large extent on whether lodge officers, prospective officers, and past masters are able to divest themselves of that deadly notion that unless a Mason memorizes and recites and delivers lectures or holds an office or works in the craft, we have nothing to offer other than sitting on the sidelines or carrying chairs or washing dishes. We're going to have to use our imagination a bit, at least to turn our attention to some other avenues of Masonic activity. And please note that I place strong emphasis on the word Masonic. I am convinced in my own mind that all over the country, with very little effort, we can find scores, yes, hundreds of young Master Masons, all with a tremendous potential that may be lost to us if we don't give them some encouragement and find a place for them in our scheme of things. It frightens me to reflect on how many such brethren might be found, disappointed, disillusioned, yet not willing to assume the initiative and find something to take the place of Masonic lodges that aren't really doing their job. Let me share with you some lines from Stephen Laycock that have long haunted me. If I were founding a university, I would first found a smoking room. Then when I had a little more money, I would found a dormitory. Then after that, or more probably with it, a decent reading room and library. After that, if I still had more money that I couldn't use, I would hire a professor and get some textbooks. Be sure to note Stephen Laycock's priorities. The smoking room came first, the professor and the textbooks last. Like it or not, my brethren, the ale house, the coffee house, the smoking room have a noble tradition in the history of our Freemason fraternity. They got the craft off to a good start. Our ancestors on this side of the Atlantic banished them as too worldly. But they could yet, if given a chance, do much to pull us out of the doldrums today. Let's never underestimate their importance. And by all means, let's get away from that awful bogeyman of Puritanism, that to eat, drink, and be merry is almost, if not entirely, sinful. Freemasonry would thrive on it again. Let's get back to the fellowship, conviviality, good conversation, and invigorating exchange of ideas that can surround the festive board and find again that which was lost. The ruffians are still in the country and within our power. We have the tools. Indiana author Lloyd C. Douglas, in his great book, The Robe, has the slave Demetrius say these words to illustrate his conception of the new Christian faith. Let us apply them to our craft and to ourselves. This faith is not like a deed to a house in which a man may live with full rights of possession. It is more like a kit of tools with which a man may build himself a house. The tools will be worth just what he does with them. When he lays them down, they will have no value until he takes them up again. This has been Within Our Power by Most Worshipful Dwight L. Smith, Grand Master of Indiana.